Oh, and are you ladies okay with me putting out the call-out number for folks to call in?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
We may do that, especially if we're going to go 2 hours. Ready? Thank you, sir. Insightful, challenging,
Informative.
inspiring,
Timely.
It's true for our time. With current issues and topics of our world, you're listening to Truth for Our Time. And now, there's our host, Tamara Scott.
And thank you, Leonard. Thank you, our producer. Appreciate everything he does to make us up on the air and make us look good when I'm throwing him curveballs. And thank you for joining us. Truth for Our Time, we help you live God's Word in today's world, helping you when the headlines hit home, that we can live God's Word in today's world on every topic. So no matter what it is, you might hear us discuss everything from apple pie to politicians, pastors to the press, to school, to sport. It doesn't matter. If God's expected you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. And that's what we do here at Truth for Our Time. So we've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking here shortly with Lynn Taylor. She's the Common Core Diva. You've heard her on the show before. Great information. If I could say, she would probably be like an archaeologist. She digs in and finds those bones of decaying education. But she's also like that NASA explorer and goes out ahead and figures out all the unknowns when they throw up some strange new rule or law or talking point or phrase or acronym. She digs in and finds out what it means. Alice Linehan, the same. Alice has her program, Women on the Wall, out of Texas, and she's been bringing people together several years in working on how to better your children's education. And Karen Bracken is joining us today, and Karen has also been one of the workers on fighting for your children's best interest in education. And I'll give them all just a hint of time to introduce themselves more thoroughly as we start the program. But I want to touch on a couple of things. Not on this show, but as a guest on another show, I did an interview on an invocation done by an atheist. That is on, I think, the Truth for Our Time page. We put it on the link there. You're welcome to go back and listen to it. But through that interview, I don't like to call people haters, but whether they're trolls, whether, they just can't even listen to anything you say without picking it apart and trying to find the wrong or the good. And they had said that I had said that atheists wanted to destroy us. That wasn't my comment. I said it. I was repeating what the gentleman said in his article in the Oskaloosa paper, when I think it was the 4th or 5th paragraph, and I don't have it right in front of me, when he says he hopes Christian prayers are someday not anymore. You have to go back and read it. But basically, he's wanting to end them. And until he does, he's going to challenge them all. Does that sound like he's trying to destroy it to you? Does to me. He doesn't want Christianity at the forefront of our foundational government like it was in our founding fathers. Then somebody else pulled in a different quote on that, where I was talking about the coexist bumper sticker, and I'll stand by that as well. You can't have Islam in that bumper sticker with the crescent moon and Christianity with the cross when ISIS, Islam, the Quran talks about killing the infidel. They want to bomb buildings, bring down planes. It's hard to coexist when somebody wants to destroy you. So I'll stand by both those statements. But I just want you to know that. So for my guest today, there's your fair warning as well. We have whatever you want to call them. Trolls, snowflakes, resistance, unhappiness, just unhappy people who, rather than listen to something and understand there might be a better way or there might be real logic, they instead do everything they can to just destroy any truth, which is, I guess, what you do when you refuse to look to the one true God, listed in our Declaration 4 different times, by the way, and in our preamble for every state, all 50 states, has a supreme being, God of our founders, somehow mentioned. So for all these folks who think that we have to have some false separation between God or church and state, it hurts me because they've been educated so poorly in America. But the fact that you've been misinformed or they've taught history inappropriately does not change history. and we are a godly nation, founded on Christian principles, not just religion principles. And for one, the Liberty Bell, with the inscription Leviticus 25:10 encircling the top of that bell, was appropriate to its ringing, proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all inhabitants thereof. So my friends, I am sorry if you think we are not a Christian nation. It is true, we did not embed any religion as far as a state-funded religion, but we did the philosophies of Christianity because they knew what made better Christians made better citizens. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Lynn Taylor, Common Core Diva, how can people find and follow you?
Oh, thank you, Tamara, for this wonderful Awesome Scout. And, you talk about misinformed. I think people are being purposely disillusioned. And I really lay a lot of that at the feet of our leaders. But how you can catch up with me, I have a blog, commoncorediva.wordpress.com. You can find me on Twitter at Common Core Diva. And I have two Facebook pages. One is Common Core Diva. The other is u.s.parent call to action. That one was created for me. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Is that parents like plural, call to action?
Yes.
And is that
Parent call to action?
Is that the number 2 or the word 2?
No, it's the word T-O. Mm-hmm.
Okay, parentscalltoaction.com?
It's on Facebook.
Oh, on Facebook. Okay, very good. Common Core Diva. Alice Linehan, how can people find and follow you?
Thank you, Tamara, and it's great to be on. And they can find me at womenonthewall.org. Is an organization that I volunteer with. And then also my own personal page is Voices Empower, EMPOWER.com, Voices Empower. And I'm excited for the show today.
Thank you so much. Karen Bracken, how can people find or follow you?
Hi. Well, you can send me a personal email at Karen, Karen, Bracken, B as in boy, RACKEN, at Reagan, like the President Reagan, .com. That's my personal email. And I have two websites. TNACC stands for Tennessee Against Common Core. TNACC.net. And I also have Starve the Beast.
I like that one.
.com.
StarveTheBeast.com.
Well, yeah, the TNACC, right? The TNACC, I call that my educational website where you can go and learn about what's happening. Starve the Beast, I call my solution to what's happening website.
Excellent. And so our listeners know you can always follow us 12 Central Time Fridays on Truth for Our Time Facebook page. You can also get the show then on Sundays at noon Central on 99.3 FM in Central Iowa, and then on the online KTIA Des Moines online at that time, noon Central on Sundays. And I need to, one more note in there. With all of the hubbub and the fuss and the fervor over my my ridicule for standing up for our Christian heritage, I got a text from Chris Roloff, the station manager, that said, "We're standing with you." I'll tell you what, I've done radio since 1998 on a variety of stations, all who were supposed to be Christian stations, and this is the first time I've had a manager tell me, "I'll stand with you." That's pretty awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right, ladies. Lynn, we're kind of going off an email that I put several of the links to this email or these documents on the Truth for Our Time Facebook page, and Lynn has kind of broken down several things. Shall we start with the not in my backyard first? Is that okay if we start with that?
Oh, sure. Why don't we do that? Yeah, because here's what people have been disillusioned with, and I think, again, laying it at the feet of our leaders, because that's who we typically look to. This is going to be the global to federal to local change that we all are seeing happen in real time in education. And we're not talking just traditional public education. We're talking all educational choices, and we're talking basically from birth till adulthood. So that's where we're going to pretty much start everything, Tamara. Okay?
So this is
And
Cradle to
Not
Grave.
In My Backyard was an absolute, yeah, Cradle to Grave. The Not in My Backyard was actually a dig at the symbol for the recent G20 logo that they used, because it was also sort of a knot, and it was, multicolored, as we see so much of the education reform stuff in. And basically what I take you through in this particular article is how the global to federal to local chain is progressing. It's been in place for a while, and we're seeing it ramp up through the Every Student Succeeds Act, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and those sorts of things. But here's what got me, and I think what should get everyone, is that the group of 20, the G20, several different nations, the United States included, there's a special task force called B as in boy 20. It stands for the Business 20. It's a task force, and their particular white paper during the recent G20 summit was all about how to use business to align education for workforce development goals that are not American but global, and thus supported by the United Nations Education Arm, or UNESCO.
And how do we help people understand this isn't seeing an industry or an enterprise that's going to be shaping up in the next 10 years, knowing they'll need a set of a skill set or a skill, a mind, whether it's computer programmers or something like that. That's not what we're talking about, where you're going to have a whole and you start offering a program. But this is, in fact, Lynn, what you're saying, it's the old caste system of deciding who will go down what educational pathway. Would that be accurate?
Exactly, and we see that through the career pathways. Yes, career clusters, career pathways, the career tech education is a huge tool for all this. But what we need to understand about this business task force, in their white paper, they come up with not only the plan for business to overreach in education, which thanks to Every Student Succeeds Act, those public-private partnerships are actually increased, but there's also how the nations are to fund this, and that gets into your legal system, how laws are made or crafted, or that sort of thing. But Karen, if you could bring in how the United Nations really ties into all this, because you have done an excellent job on educating all of us about the Agenda 21, the United Nations. So could you help me here with this explanation?
Well, I started my activism not in education. I started educating people on Agenda 21, but I also knew that how they were going to bring in the policies of Agenda 21 was through the education system. So when Race at the Top started and Common Core, I knew what this was, and I kind of changed gears away from Agenda 21 and more towards education, but also bringing in the Agenda 21, the United Nations element. So basically what we're seeing in education in the United States today is not American education reform. This is a global education reform agenda. And I'm just going to give you, without even going through the whole, gambit or timeline, just, there is a document called the Education for Sustainable Development Toolkit. It was written at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in 2002, and it was by a UNESCO secretariat by the name of Rosalind McEwen, and it was funded by a backdoor grant from the U.S. Department of Education. And if you read this toolkit, it's a real eye-opener, and if anybody does look it up, it's online, you can find it. There is a statement, and she goes all about how wonderful Agenda 21, the 1992 Rio Summit, how wonderful Agenda 21 was, and all that. So it's really an eye-opener. But if you go and open the document to page 10 and look at the bottom of page 10, there's a statement in here that I think says it all. And it says, generally, more highly educated people who have higher income consume more resources poorly educated people
Okay,
who tend
hold
to
on.
have lower incomes.
Okay,
In this case,
Karen,
more
hold on.
Mhm.
We're going to come back and have you read it top to bottom after the break. Karen Bracken, Lynn Taylor, Alice Linehan, panel discussion, your education, your child, your nation. Right back after these messages, Truth for Our Time. Tamara Scott, 99.3 FM.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time. Now, here's your host, Tamara Scott.
Thanks for staying tuned. I am talking with Lynn Taylor, Alice Linehan, Karen Bracken, and we are talking about education. And if you think this doesn't impact you, maybe you don't have children in school, maybe you're not interested in college, it impacts you. If you live in the United States, it will impact you. We'll get into that a little bit later as far as the cost. We're going to talk about two bills that are before your legislature at the federal level right now on free education. My husband used to joke and say there's nothing more expensive than a free kitten. Or he'd say there's nothing more expensive than a woman who's free for the evening. But, right? Put your head around that one. But this is true. The trillions it's going to cost us for free education. So we're talking right now with Karen Bracken, and she was talking about the UN and some of the documents. And Karen, I want you to go back right into the quote that you were talking about. But if you could, a link to that document, put it on our Truth for Our Time Facebook page, that would be much appreciated.
I will.
Thanks.
I would love that, and I'll even share with you my highlighted one because that gives you a lot more information. Okay, so it says generally more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Basically, and she elaborates more as you read on, but basically what she's saying is we basically have to dumb down education to lower the income of people so they use less resources. So it says it right in this document, and again, it was created at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and I'm from Tennessee, and it was funded by a backdoor grant of $400,000 from the U.S. Department of Education. And we have documents, UNESCO documents, addressing Common Core and education that go back to the 1970s. Bill Gates himself, in 2004, signed an agreement with UNESCO to deliver universal education, with UNESCO writing the teacher's syllabus, and Microsoft agreeing to uphold the UNESCO Constitution. I mean, these are just a couple examples to illustrate that what we're seeing is a global agenda to basically change the values, attitudes, and beliefs and behaviors of future generations of Americans.
All right, and I have my own thought on that, but Alice, I want to give you a chance to chime in.
Thank you. It has taken me a while to wrap my head around the fact that when I send my children to their traditional public school in America, that these kind of influences from outside of America are impacting those classrooms. But when you meet people like Karen Bracken and Lynn Taylor and yourself and so many others that have started asking the kind of questions, when you come across quotes, and I want to read a quote by Mark Tucker, because this to me, when people say we're conspiracy theorists, and when you start talking about the UN and Agenda 21, these people are conspiracy theorists and foil hat wearing moms. When Mark Tucker has a Dear Hillary letter and he quotes, there's a quote in there, the federal government should remold the entire American system for human resource development, a seamless system of unending skill development that begins in the home with the very young and continues through school, post-secondary education, and the workplace. And when you read a quote like that and you understand what is happening today in Austin, Texas, I'm in Texas, and we're in a special session, and the debate and the controversy going on is all about this shift in education from reading, writing, math, and history, and giving the American dream through an equal opportunity of success in life. And we're shifting it to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. I think the proof is in the reality that we see on the ground today.
Well, I want to touch on this too. Karen, that quote was rather amazing, rather stunning, and rather revealing. Somehow they're trying to twist and lift up the fact that lower education, lower income is better for our future. It may be true that they may use or consume less because they don't have the ability to go out and purchase that $25,000 speedboat for the family to go skiing over the weekend, or they may not be traveling and taking vacations, but that's also money that's not going back into our economy as well then, not to mention that families who may be uneducated, and this is not for me about the what's traditional educational degrees and scholarly through academics. I think we can learn through our own reading in our libraries as they used to do years ago. So the cost to society for the uneducated, for the lower income people, the cost to society will far outweigh any benefit they think there may be. This is just alarming, but if this doesn't prove the dumbing down, I don't know what does. And that people want to intentionally do it. And here's the other thing. I think that's Karen, you go first, and then I think that was Alice, or Alice or Lynn, you can go next. Go.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, and that is just the point. I think a lot of parents that are looking at Common Core and what their children are learning today are realizing that the education system is dumbed down. And this document, and these people have a list of things that they consider to be unsustainable, which means we have to get rid of them. We have to end the practice of things that are on this list. And one of the things on the list is consumerism. They believe that consumerism is, we need to go back to the days where we owned one pair of shoes, one blouse, one skirt, one pair of pants. But consumerism to them is considered unsustainable. So that kind of ties into that statement. And just to get back real quick to Mark Tucker was extremely influential in the creation of policy and law in the Clinton administration. So that letter that Alice read from, the infamous Hillary letter, Dear Hillary letter, Mark Tucker played a very influential role in developing education policy under Bill Clinton as our president, and he has not stopped since. He is still deeply involved.
Alice, was that you next? Or was it Lynn?
I think it was Lynn.
Oh, was it Lynn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, going back to tying all of this into the G20's latest meeting, these are our current elected leaders from across the globe, and they're gathering in Germany to say, yes, we're going to uphold this global shift. And of course, America was well represented as well. So yes, that particular tie into current, but all this other back information is also being carried on to this day. It never stopped. Common Core did not die when Every Student Succeed Act was passed. In fact, it was codified, and the way it was codified is through the assessments and the alignment to that post-secondary readiness for career or college, known as career tech education. And it says very plainly in the law, all education must be post-secondary readiness aligned. Now, not by an educational law, but by a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that we passed as a nation in 2014. And also, you want to point out that by the American nation's leaders saying, yes, we'll uphold this Business 20 task force plan for aligning education even further, you're seeing our leaders take us and tell our nation and our students, no matter what age they are, that it's more important for us to adhere to the United Nations agreements than it is to our own binding documents, such as our Constitution or such as the laws that are laid out, that there should be no federal overreach into education. And that brings up another thing. It's not just the U.S. Department of Education. Tamara, I don't know if your listeners know this, but every federal agency at a cabinet level has designed for education workforce alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I want our folks to understand again, this is not, I think for the average person listening, they're going to think, as Alice said, we're conspiracy folks. So how do you help them understand this is really, is it taking us back to the caste system? Because we're going to get into the free college bills that are sitting in the House and the Senate right now at the federal level, and that the trillions that's going to cost us as Americans. But my point being, if the government pays for it, which by the way, the government pays for nothing that it doesn't take money from you. So if the taxpayers are going to be coerced and forced to pay for something, whether they use it or not, the government will then decide who gets to utilize it or not and how, just like we're now seeing with health care / health control. The government will decide who gets education.
It is exactly what it's very easy to sum it all up in my mind, make people understand that whatever the government funds, the government runs and controls. They control our health care, they control our debt. Now they control K through 12 and pre-K through 12 education, and they're going to control college education as well. If it's funded through the federal government, they will control it. It's not complicated.
And in this article,
And
this is, go ahead.
Lynn,
Go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to say, and when we say the government, when we understand that this is a global shift, that government, that federal, it's not the United States federal government. What this means is that you're no longer that kid from Texas or Tennessee or North Carolina who was a Boy Scout or lived in a local community who lives in a global economy. You're now a global citizen who happens to live in America, and that government is a UN-controlled government, not a American-controlled government.
And we're going to be closing out here
Right,
shortly.
and one thing we need to also help the listeners understand is that through Karen's document, which I did a point-by-point article on, and it's a fabulous document that she has shared with everyone. But here's another reoccurring theme that we can see not only from that document, but into the present day shift in the education federal laws that trickle down to the state and some from the global. Education's change agent.
Yes, education is the change agent. When we come back, I want to touch on one more thing on this article, and then we'll move forward. We'll be right back. Lynn Taylor, Alice Linehan, Karen Bracken. We're talking about education, your child, our nation, our debt. Right back to Mara Scott, Truth for Our Time. Stay tuned. It does impact you.
Hello?
Okay, ladies. Right now.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Ladies? Hello? We're on a break right now, but our
Yes.
listeners on Facebook can still hear us, so I'll let you know that. When we come back, we'll have a 10-minute segment. I want to touch briefly on the Addis Ababa, because I was there in 2011, so I just want to touch on that a little bit, Lynn. Maybe on the redistribution, the funding of it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the computer. I'm sorry, I was looking at the computer for the next segment. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, no problem. I'll touch briefly on the World Bank and the Addis Ababa on the back of
Okay,
page
dear.
3, and really, this is our third segment. We may not get to the defunding or the college funding until the next show. Are you guys okay with that?
That's okay.
Okay, we'll get
Alice,
Alice.
what about you?
That's
I
fine.
know that I know that you have to go quicker than anybody, so is that going to work for you?
Yes, that's fine.
We'll get you in as much as we can.
No problem, no problem.
My producer just stepped out. When he steps back in, we'll be a go.
Okay.
And so when we start on education, we'll start with Higher Illusions of Higher Aspirations, Part 2, Part 1 and Part 2. All right, ladies. Thank you so much.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time. And now, here's Tamara Scott.
Thank you for staying tuned. I am talking with Lynn Taylor, Alice Linehan, Karen Bracken. We're talking about education, not only in America, because unfortunately, when people say we're educating for a global world or a global economy or global competition, we get that. To most of us, that means we're going to make our kids the sharpest, brightest kids they can be, make sure they have the tools, whether it's math, whether it's literature, whatever it is. But that's not what this means. It means we're going to put them on a habit trail, if you will, those little running wheels where the gerbil just runs and runs and runs, and they are shot down different habit trails wherever the government decides they should go, and it really limits what they should do rather than what they could do. In between the break, I just picked up this book. Just picked it up. You would do well to wish to learn our arts and our ways of life, and above all, the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you are. Congress will do everything they can to assist you in wise intention. According to George Washington, what students would learn in American schools, above all, was the religion of Jesus Christ. So again, I just had to come back to that a little bit as we were talking about our Christian heritage as a nation earlier, but also what's happened to us in education. We threw out the Bible in the 50s and 60s and 70s of this last century, thinking we had somehow enlightened ourselves, and we're so much further along than what our founding fathers were when they created this young nation that has had more innovation, more creation, treatments and cures and Nobel Peace Prizes than any other nation on the face of the globe throughout history. We threw it out because we thought we knew better, and since that time we have groped for something to replace it, as we've seen test scores decline, students and their well-being decline, the family decline, and yes, I think they are intertwined. And today we are talking about the fact that we are now scrambling so that we're looking to other countries and other governments and limiting our own so that it will be fair competition across the globe. When they say global competition, maybe that's what they mean. Holding ours back at the starting line so everybody else gets a head start. Lynn, in your article you talk about Addis Ababa, and when I was reading this, every so often you read something and it just hits something you've experienced. I was in Ethiopia in 2011, and at the airport there was a woman behind me in line who spoke English, and she was there with the World Bank. And I didn't get a long time to talk with her, but in my heart, in my inner being, something didn't mesh well. And now I'm wondering, what was the World Bank doing in Addis Ababa?
Well, if you read the entire article, it will tell you that the World Bank, as we know, is a major backer of the global shift in education and global Common Core, because Common Core did not get its roots in America. It was not state-created. It was globally created. So that's part of why, the long and short of it is, that's part of why the World Bank was in Ethiopia. They're a huge funder of this global shift. Another way that you can tie this between the World Bank and the United Nations report that Karen's brought up, and then the global point that Alice was making about you're no longer the kid from Texas, you just happen to live there, is that science, technology, engineering, and math, that acronym STEM, is a marketing tool that was created by the United Nations and picked up by our National Science Foundation and then fed to our former president as a way to help shift education, economy, and culture. We were to become a STEM nation, a STEM people, for a STEM workforce, for a STEM economy. That's pretty much what is the reason why the World Bank was there. And they've continued to fund this. We now have a International Finance Commission devoted expressly for education. And Shakira was present during the G20 correlated activities, and you can find, and I'll have to link this to you, but there's a YouTube video where she is on stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people sitting there going, oh yes, we have all this need for global education, and we need to fund it globally. Here's this commission that you can send money to, because we have to have global citizens. And in big red letters behind her, you see global citizens.
Ladies, anybody else? I've never seen women be so quiet.
It is stunning to see how successful they have been. And I think that it goes to, and Lynn made this point earlier, and I just want to reiterate it, because I see it happening today as the special session is going on in Austin. The deception behind so many of us, and I think it goes to our faith in God, that if you don't have that, then your attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors are much more easily swayed.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that foundation, you can see things And it goes to the education that our children are getting, that dumbing down that you're talking about. If you don't have a foundation, if you don't know how to read words phonetically, where you understand how to find out the true meaning of a word, and you understand that the push for whole language, there was a political purpose behind it, and it was to deceive. And so when you see something, and you see how far they've come, we have to understand that we have to go back to the foundation so that we can find out the true meaning, so that we can so that we can stop it. And I think that God is working. This can be so overwhelming. I think that's why we were all so silent. But God wins in the end. And we are called to, and I go back to what Dr. Terrence Moore, when I asked him, what do we do? What do we do? And he said, fight. Fight for your child's mind, fight for their soul, and fight for America's stories to be told, because that's what is under attack.
Repeat that again. Fight for your child's
And I
mind.
just quickly want to add that if you think education is safe from all this, or private education, parochial education, you have UN clubs in all of those education courses, and they are sent to mock UN meetings, all kinds of things. So yeah, we've got it in every educational choice.
And repeating what Alice said, you've got to
That's
fight
right. And
for your child's mind, your soul, and the American
fight
story
for
to
your
be told.
child's mind. That's it. And that came from Dr. Terrence Moore.
I am trying to get
And that's what motivates me every day.
Thankfully, you ladies are fighting this. For the rest of us, for mainstream America, for moms and dads, we're just trying to get meals on the table, bills paid, and schedules met, and kids to soccer practice. They don't have time to dig and do everything that you ladies do. This is why we have this show. If we can go out and hunt it down and bring it in for you, this is exactly what we're doing. When we come back, we'll have our closing segment for this show, and then we are going to do a special edition. You'll only be able to get it online on the Truth for Our Time Facebook page. We're going to do a special edition on the cost of the education bills. And those two education bills that are sitting in Congress, thank you, Lynn, for your work, and Alice and Karen, all of you. Senate 806 and HR, House HR 1880. 1880 and S806, and Lynn has those in her links. Those are on the Truth for Our Time Facebook page, where you can go through and check those out. We'll go through those next, that special session, that next edition that we're going to do. When we come back, we'll close out this show by talking about education for your child. Listen, if God gave you kids, they're your responsibility. You're their advocate, not their teacher, not their pastor, not anybody but you. Rise up and do your job. Tamara Scott. School door, House HR 188.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time. Here is Tamara Scott.
You're listening to Truth for Our Time. I am blessed today to have Karen Bracken, Alice Linehan, Lynn Taylor, as we're talking about education and our nation, education and our children, education and your responsibility. It doesn't, people think that they just get them to kindergarten and there they go off to school. They just get them to preschool and somebody else takes the role, takes the job. If you bought a TV and you got it home and it didn't work, only half the channels worked, or the reception wasn't good, you would take it back. You would demand your money back, and you wouldn't just put up with it. And for decades now, we have spent money. If you had to write a check at the school door for the cost of educating your child, and I'm not just saying the cost, but what your taxes cover between your property tax, your federal tax, all the taxes that in Iowa, I think it's 60-some cents of every dollar goes to education, more if we include the federal as well. If you had to write that out every year when your kid went to school, you would think twice. You would be shopping for another school, for the better school, for the best education for your kids. And many would certainly be demanding their money back because the product is not there. The promises that were made have not been achieved. And in fact, your child has possibly been harmed in some other way, if not physically, if not emotionally, and certainly not been given the truth that they used to get in our schools with our Christian heritage. So the frustration for me is many of you out there, this is a Christian radio station, many of your children are in public schools. I don't know why. Because if God gave you your kids, He equipped you in how to raise your kids. And yes, you can find help. I found the best clarinet instructor, the best harp instructor, because those were not my gifts. Math. I found a calculus teacher who had written the program for the Black helicopter, the Black Hawk helicopter for Boeing. God blessed us. He brought in those people to help in the responsibility He had given me. Because when God calls you, He equips you. But ladies, as we close this last segment out, what would you say to parents? There's nothing more important they can do than the education of their children, not just for academics, for a paycheck, for a better salary, but for eternity and the well-being of their soul.
Well, I couldn't agree more. There was a day when all education was done at the kitchen table. And some of the greatest minds in the history of this country were educated at the kitchen table. I think we're back to that point in history where we have to take back our children, we have to take back education. Our elected officials are not going to give us back control of education. It is not going to happen. And it's not going to stop with just the public school system. They have to have all children in the system. That will eventually include homeschool, private school. All children must be in the system, and they're going to do whatever they can through either enticing parents with money. California right now passed a law where they're giving parents $3,000 per child for homeschool, but it can only be secular education. So they're giving these children, these parents, this money, but they're saying you cannot send your child or participate in a homeschool program that incorporates Christianity or whatever. It has to be secular. So, they're going to scheme and plot however they can and entice people and fool people and deceive people into getting every child into the system. And that's where, to me, the only solution right now are parents. That's why I put the star for Beast USA. I believe the solution is the beast that we're looking at right now only needs one thing to survive and be successful, and that's our children. Take those children away, and that beast will die. And that's what I hope, to get across to parents today.
And I know that you talk
And
about...
I would...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alice.
Well, just to reiterate what Karen is saying, I think many conservatives on the right are being deceived by the narrative, the false narrative of school choice. We already have school choice in America. We can pull our kids out of that system and we can homeschool, just as Tamara is saying. But there's so much false information out there about school choice language that choice is the carrot to control. As a mother, I do not get the right to educate my children the way that I see fit from the state or federal government. That is an inalienable right that I have been given by God. And by buying into that I need state and federal laws passed to regulate my choices, I am handing my rights as a mother over to the state to control my children's education. And that is the battle that's happening right now in Austin, Texas. And I listened to a strong conservative Republican legislator that I worked very hard to get elected. And he was being deceived, thinking that if the state gives children with learning disabilities money, that parent has control. No, that when the money follows the child, so does the control from the state or federal government. And the deception is rampant on the right. And I wanted to make that clear because they are deceiving. And when you look at the UN documents, they clearly say the way to global education is through choice, because with choice comes rules and regulations.
Repeat that. Global choice.
We have to stop the deception.
With global choice comes rules and regulations.
The way to global education. Yeah, the way to global education is through choice, because with choice comes rules and regulations.
All right,
and
lady.
it's just like Obama changed the Oh, go ahead.
Well, you hold that thought. You hold that thought about Obama changing the regulations. You'll hear the music. We've got to close out this segment. For everyone listening, we're doing a special edition. You can get it on Truth for Our Time on the Facebook page. It'll be there this week for you, along with a lot of these links. This is heavy information, but grandparent, parent, you need to have it. You're responsible for the education of your children, grandchildren. It's always information you can use as you go out. Live bolder, love better, laugh bigger. You've now been given a lot of information, and so I encourage you, do not be intimidated by this, but put it before the Lord in prayer, and understand if He gives you the opportunity, He will also bring you through it and help you with it. Be encouraged, never be complacent.